Niceville is more than 150 years old. Maybe. Kind of. Sort of. So here's basically the deal. Is that Jesse Rogers, a guy from Louisiana, came with his cattle in 1842 and found Boggy Bayou. Well, found's a harsh word, but he showed up with his cows. And so Jesse was there for a while, but nobody really followed because of the Seminole Wars. So the Seminole Wars were a series of pretty brutal conflicts between, you guessed it, the Seminole tribes of Florida and the United States government. And they weren't resolved until really right before the Civil War. So not a lot of people wanted to move to Florida because they didn't want to get killed. And so that lasted until the Civil War. Civil War happens, nobody's moving here because there's no reason to. They're fighting a civil war. And then after the Civil War ends, well, a couple people start to trickle down, and that's when you start to see the population increase in the Niceville area. A bunch of people whose homes and farms were ruined by the Civil War, either because they were off fighting or because they were burned to the ground, started to move down to the Florida area to get a new start. And that's pretty much what happened. That's when Boggy started, really in the right after the Civil War, late 1890s. But it really started to take off when James Plew, a developer from Chicago, decided to move from Chicago down to what's now Valparaiso. And we bought a bunch of land and invested heavily, brought other people from Chicago who wanted to get away from the fast pace of life in that city. And that's when we really started to see a little bit of a buildup, a couple hundred more people. You got to remember, at the turn of the 20th century, there were like 50 people that lived in Niceville alone. Right about that number in Valparaiso as well. And so hundreds of people was doubling, tripling the number of people that lived here. But the real explosion came after World War II. After World War II, Eglin became a big research and test base, and you saw thousands upon thousands of people move in. So by the time 1980 rolled around, thousands of people in Niceville, to today, 16,000 people. So in the space of 120 years, we went from 50 people to 16,000 people. It's a huge demographic shift in such a small area, and it's basically because of the Air Force Base. If you want to learn more about Niceville's history, local history, like and comment.